I never thought a single sound could change the course of my entire life, but that night, it did. It was 11:47 p.m., a cold Thursday night in Seattle. I remember because the rain had been tapping on the window for hours, almost like it was trying to warn me about something. My husband, Daniel, was sleeping beside me, or at least pretending to. His breathing was slow, too controlled, too steady. It was the kind of breathing someone makes when they're trying too hard to look asleep. And then his phone buzzed, just once, a soft vibration, so quiet that it should have been forgettable. But for some reason, something inside me snapped awake. Daniel never got late-night texts. Never. He was a man of routine, a man who slept early, woke early, kept everything predictable, almost boringly predictable. We'd been married for 24 years, and if there was one thing I knew about him, it was that he didn't keep secrets. Or so I believed. The phone lit up against the darkness, casting a faint glow across the room. I turned my head slightly, pretending to adjust my pillow, and in that split second, I saw it. A name I didn't recognize, a heart emoji next to it, and a preview that made my stomach twist so violently I had to press my mouth against my hand. Can't stop thinking about tonight. Heart emoji. My pulse froze. For a moment, I felt like the whole world stopped. The rain, the clock on the wall, my own heartbeat, everything just stopped. I blinked, hoping I'd misread it. Maybe it was a spam message. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But deep down, a painful truth curled its fingers around my chest. Daniel wasn't sleeping at all. I could feel it now. His whole body stiffened the moment his phone vibrated. His fingers twitched, his jaw tightened. He was awake. He knew I'd seen something. But he didn't open his eyes. He just lay there, waiting, praying I would ignore it. My hands were shaking, but I kept my breathing steady. I knew if I confronted him right there, he would shut down, lie, deny, twist it. After 24 years of marriage, I knew exactly how he worked. He was good with words. Too good. He could flip any situation, turn any accusation into a misunderstanding or a joke. So I stayed quiet. But inside, something in me cracked open. Not anger, not pain, not yet. Just a cold, sharp curiosity. The kind that grows when you suddenly realize your life might not be what you thought it was. I turned my back to him, facing the window. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I acted normal. I made coffee, I packed his lunch, I kissed him on the cheek like I always did. But as he left, a strange smile crossed his face, almost too warm, too gently placed, as if he was trying to erase what I'd seen. I watched him drive away, and as soon as his car disappeared down the street, I walked back into the house with trembling legs. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wooden surface that had witnessed years of birthdays, arguments, anniversaries, and quiet Sunday mornings. And all I could think was, how long? How long has he been hiding something? Was it just one message? Or more? My hands reached for his laptop almost instinctively. Daniel wasn't careful, never had been. He trusted routine, trusted me, trusted the comfort of a long marriage. The laptop opened without needing a password. My heart pounded as the screen lit up. I swallowed hard and clicked on his email first. Nothing suspicious, just work, bills, random newsletters he never read. Then I checked his main messaging apps. Clean. Too clean. That in itself was suspicious. Daniel wasn't the type to delete anything. He kept his inbox full of unread messages, missed reminders, old receipts. So why was everything spotless? Why was everything wiped? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitant. A part of me wanted to stop, wanted to shut the laptop, walk outside, and pretend I never saw anything. Pretend my marriage was safe and warm like I always believed. But then I remembered the message, that heart, those words, and something inside me hardened. I checked his browser history. More emptiness, more deletion, more suspicious silence. It felt like standing in a room where someone had cleaned too fast, too perfectly. He was hiding something big. My chest tightened. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the screen, feeling the weight of 2 decades pressing down on me. Finally, I opened the folder labeled Work Projects. Daniel loved organization. He kept thousands of files from his architecture job, stored year by year, project by project. But one folder caught my eye. It was new, created just 3 weeks ago, with a name that made no sense. Sunset Notes. He'd never used poetic names for anything work-related. His files were always practical, descriptive, boring. My cursor hovered over the folder. My throat dried. A strange buzzing filled my ears. I clicked once. A password prompt appeared, and my heart dropped. Daniel had never password protected a single folder in his entire life. My hands went cold, my lips parted. It felt like I had just found a locked diary in a stranger's home, except the stranger was the man I'd slept next to for 24 years. I typed our anniversary date. Incorrect. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried our daughter's birthday. Incorrect. My chest ached as if someone had pressed a fist against it. He didn't use any family dates, none of the things that matter to us. He used something else. Someone else. I closed the laptop and pressed my hands to my face. Tears burned behind my eyes, but they didn't fall. Not yet. Something stronger held them back, a mixture of betrayal, fear, and an overwhelming determination to know the truth. Then, a thought struck me. His phone, his backup, all his apps synced to his cloud. I grabbed my coat, keys, and drove straight to the Verizon store. My hands trembled as I spoke to the associate. Hi. I need help accessing my husband's shared backup account. It's a family plan. He asked me to download some of our old photos, but I can't get in. The girl nodded, typing away. Do you have his phone number? I gave it. She typed again. Then she looked up. Do you want access to his backup messages, too? It can include deleted ones. My breath caught. This was it. The moment everything might break. The moment the truth might finally reveal itself. I nodded slowly. Yes, please. She turned a screen toward me, and my entire body went still. There they were. Hundreds, maybe thousands of messages from the same woman. A woman named Riley. Messages going back almost 7 months. Pictures, late-night calls, long paragraphs, memories they shared, secrets. Plans that did not include me. I stared at the screen as the world blurred. The lights, the soft music, the shelves, everything just disappeared. My hands felt numb, my throat burned, I couldn't breathe. 7 months. 7 months of lies, 7 months of pretending, 7 months of a double life. He had been coming home to me every night, kissing me goodnight, eating the meals I cooked, walking through our home, all while texting another woman every chance he got. And suddenly, everything made sense. His late nights at work, his sudden gym membership, his new cologne, his extra care with his appearance, his strange warmth, and stranger distance. I stood there, frozen, staring at the reality of my broken marriage. The associate's voice faded in and out. "Ma'am, are you okay?" No. No, I wasn't. But something inside me shifted. Not weakness, not helplessness, not focused. Turned into a diagonal direction. I turned to her slowly. "Yes," I whispered. "Print me everything." She blinked. "Everything?" "Every message, every photo, every call log, every file." When I reached home after leaving the Verizon store, the sky had already darkened, the kind of dark that makes the world feel heavier, quieter, almost eerie. I sat inside the car for a few minutes, engine off, the printed stack of messages lying on the passenger seat like a sleeping animal. I stared at them, feeling their presence, their weight, their truth pressing against my chest. The house looked normal from the outside. Warm light spilling through the kitchen window, the faint outline of the wooden porch we decorated every Christmas, the quiet comfort of a place I once believed was safe. But now, everything felt different, as if those walls were hiding secrets that had been breathing inside them long before I noticed. I stepped out of the car slowly, my legs heavy. The grass under my feet felt colder than usual, and the evening breeze brushed past my shoulders like a quiet warning. I walked toward the house, my fingers tightening around the papers. The moment I opened the front door, a familiar scent washed over me. The smell of cinnamon candles and Daniel's cologne mixing with the warmth of home. But instead of comfort, it stung. It felt like a reminder of how many nights he had walked into this house with the scent of another woman still lingering on him. I closed the door behind me, the click echoing in the hallway. The silence inside was suffocating. I stood there for a moment, motionless, listening to the empty sound of my own breathing. Every memory of our life together resurfaced, from the day we moved in, to the nights we stayed up talking about our plans, to the morning we argued over a broken coffee mug. Everything suddenly felt fragile, like glass that had been cracked without me noticing. I placed the printed pages on the dining table. I didn't want to read them again, but I forced myself to. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. I needed to feel every cut, every wound, every lie, because only then could I decide what to do next. My hands trembled as I picked up the first page. The messages were intimate, messy, emotional, the kind couples exchange when they think they're falling in love. Except Daniel was already married. To me. I read through each word like someone digging through ashes, searching for something still alive. Some messages were harmless on the surface, but underneath them, the betrayal screamed louder than any argument we'd ever had. Some were filled with affection he hadn't shown me in months. Some were late-night confessions. Some were promises. And then there were pictures, selfies, smirks, moments captured between them while I folded our laundry, cooked dinner, waited for him to come home. I pressed my lips together so hard they hurt. Tears blurred the words on the page, but I refused to let them fall. I couldn't afford to break. Not now. I finished reading, dropped the papers on the table, and sank onto the chair behind me. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left nothing but silence. I stared at the empty wall for what felt like hours. I kept replaying our entire marriage in my mind. All the little moments, the inside jokes, the plans, the vacations, the arguments, the reconciliations, the scars that healed, the wounds that never did. And I kept asking myself the same question. When did he stop choosing me? That thought alone felt like a knife twisting slowly, because I knew the truth. Maybe he didn't stop suddenly. Maybe it happened little by little. A shift here, a distraction there, a conversation that shouldn't have happened, a secret kept, a lie told, a line crossed.
My phone buzzed suddenly, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Daniel. Heading home. Love you. I stared at the screen, frozen. The man was telling me he loved me while his messages to someone else were still warm in my hands. The irony was suffocating. I typed nothing back. I didn't trust myself to speak. Instead, I stood up, walked to the mirror in the hallway, and looked at myself. Really looked. My hair was slightly messy from the rain. My eyes were swollen, not from crying, but from holding in everything I felt. My shoulders were tense. My expression was blank. I looked like a stranger living in the body of a woman who had loved for too long. I reached up and touched my cheek, as if trying to understand when I became so breakable. And then something shifted inside me. Something quiet but undeniable. A thought. A realization. A decision forming like a storm on the horizon. I wasn't going to confront him yet. Not immediately. Not emotionally. Not impulsively. No, I needed time. Time to think. Time to observe. Time to understand the full truth. Time to plan. Because if there was one thing I'd learned in life, it's that a woman who has been lied to for too long doesn't explode. She transforms. The door opened less than 15 minutes later. Daniel walked in, wiping the rain from his hair, humming lightly, as if everything was perfectly normal. He hung his coat, kicked off his shoes, loosened his tie. He was in a strangely good mood, almost glowing, as if something exciting had happened, as if someone else had filled his day with warmth. I watched him from the kitchen doorway. He didn't notice me at first. He looked around, smiled to himself, then saw the dinner I had set on the counter. He sighed softly, the same sigh he always had when he appreciated something. Except now it felt fake. "Oh, you're up." He smiled warmly at me, his eyes soft, the way they had been years ago when we were young. "You didn't have to wait." I forced a smile back. I wasn't tired. He walked closer, kissed my forehead gently. The touch felt foreign, almost calculated, like he was following a script, like he was playing the role of a husband instead of actually being one. "How was your day?" he asked, his tone casual. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Quiet." He nodded, completely unaware of the storm sitting on the dining table behind me. The pages, the proof, the truth that could shatter everything he thought was still intact. I waited for him to ask something else. Anything. But he didn't. He turned away, washed his hands, sat down, and started eating like nothing was wrong. And that's when I knew. He wasn't going to confess. He wasn't going to tell me anything. He had mastered the art of pretending. Part of me expected guilt on his face, a nervous twitch, a hesitant glance, a slip-up. But he was perfect. Too perfect. He laughed at small things. He complimented the food. He asked about the neighbor. He even told me about a long meeting he had at work. I nodded, pretending to listen, but inside I was taking notes. Every detail, every lie wrapped in a story, every shift in his tone, every shift in his eyes. Later, when he showered, I stood outside the bathroom listening to the sound of water hitting the tiles. My hands clenched into fists. My heart beat unevenly. The betrayal felt louder than the running water. He came out, wrapped in a towel, humming again. I watched him from the corner of my eye. He seemed lighter, happier, like a man who had found something new in life. He didn't notice I could see the truth in his smile, a truth he wasn't hiding as well as he thought. We went to bed. He kissed my cheek. He whispered goodnight. He turned his back to me and fell asleep quickly. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind playing scenes from our marriage like a film I never agreed to watch. And every scene felt different now. Every memory felt altered by the weight of 7 months of messages. The past had been rewritten without my permission. I closed my eyes and let myself breathe slowly. In out. In, out. I didn't cry. Not that night. I couldn't. Crying felt too small, too temporary, too powerless. I needed clarity, strength, control. That's when a new thought surfaced, one that made my chest tighten and my pulse quicken. If Daniel had lied for 7 months, how deep did this go? How many layers of secrets were waiting for me? How long had he been living a double life? And the most dangerous question of all, why did he choose her? That single question lit something inside me, a spark, a fire, a plan beginning to form piece by piece. Not revenge yet, but the blueprint of something bigger, something he would never see coming. Now that I had the truth, the next step was simple. I had to discover everything. Every message, every secret, every hidden corner of his life. Not to save our marriage, but to prepare for what I was going to do, when the time was right. The night grew quieter, the house darker, Daniel's breathing steady. I lay beside him, my eyes open, my mind sharp, and without saying a single word, I took the first step toward a plan that would turn his world upside down. Because if he thought he could betray me quietly, he had no idea who I could become when pushed to the edge.
I woke up the next morning with a strange mix of heaviness and clarity. The kind that comes after a storm, when the world looks the same, but something inside you has changed permanently. Daniel had already left for work. His side of the bed was cold, untouched by guilt, untouched by truth. For a moment, I simply lay there, staring at the empty space he had occupied for more than 2 decades. Funny how 20 years can feel like an entire lifetime, and then suddenly, in one moment of honesty, feel like a lie you accidentally lived. I sat up slowly, the quiet house echoing the thoughts I couldn't push away anymore. My eyes drifted toward the nightstand where I had placed the printed messages. Even now, they felt like a living thing in the room, breathing, watching, reminding me that everything I thought I knew had been rewritten. After a few minutes, I stood up, tied my hair back, and walked into the kitchen. The light was soft, the coffee machine humming quietly, the morning breeze slipping through the window. Everything felt normal. But I wasn't. My heart wasn't. My mind wasn't. Something inside me had shifted so deeply that even the simplest things felt unfamiliar. I poured myself a cup of coffee and held it between my hands, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. I sat at the dining table and stared at the papers again. Not to read them, I knew every word by now, but to remind myself why I couldn't just let this go, why I couldn't pretend, why I couldn't sit across from him every night, smiling, cooking, waiting, hoping. Because hope had become a luxury I could no longer afford. I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. If I wanted the truth, I needed to dig deeper. I started by opening Daniel's email. I knew his password. It hadn't changed in years. A part of me hoped I wouldn't find anything, that maybe the messages were the extent of it. But another part, the part that had grown sharper overnight, already knew better. The inbox loaded slowly, as if hesitating to show me what it was hiding. At first, everything looked normal. Work emails, newsletters, receipts, ordinary things from an ordinary life. But then I saw a folder on the left sidebar, one I had never noticed before. A folder named Sky. My heart stilled for a second. I clicked it, my fingers shaking despite the calm surface of my thoughts. Inside were dozens of emails, some recent, some months old, all from the same woman. Her name flickered on the screen like a warning, Sienna Roberts. The name felt soft, delicate, almost poetic. A name that didn't belong in my life, in my marriage, in my home. The emails weren't as explicit as the messages, but they were emotional. Long paragraphs of confessions, plans, inside jokes, dreams they shared. She talked about her job at the cafe,
about missing him, about wishing they could take a trip together, just like they talked about. She mentioned dates, real dates, morning coffee meetups, long drives, evenings when Daniel had told me he was working late. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I kept reading. Each line was like opening another door to a part of his life I never knew existed, a part he chose to give someone else instead of me. One email caught my attention. The subject line was simple: someday. I clicked it. Her message was long and emotional, talking about her dreams of a future with him, about how she believed he would eventually choose her. She talked about a place by the lake he had promised her, a home, a life, a version of him that wasn't tied to a marriage he claimed had lost its warmth. My chest tightened so deeply, I had to set the laptop aside. I pressed my hands against my face and took slow breaths, trying to steady myself. He had told her things he never told me. He had shown her sides of himself he had kept hidden from me. He had built a world with her in secret. And suddenly, the 7 months of text messages expanded into something much bigger, something deeper, something more dangerous. It wasn't an affair. It was a second life. The anger inside me grew slowly, like a wildfire beginning from a spark. Not loud, not dramatic, but controlled, calm, focused. I wiped my face, closed the emails, and opened a new browser tab. If he had hidden things this well, there had to be more. I searched his bank statements next. His account was linked to mine, so the access was easy. For the first few minutes, everything looked normal. Grocery runs, bills, gas, usual expenses. But then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A payment, then another, and another. Same place, same amount, same pattern. A boutique hotel on the east side of town, a place I had never been to, a place Daniel had once described as too expensive for silly nights out. There were 7 charges, 7 visits, over the past 5 months. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe for a moment. The dates lined up too perfectly with the nights he came home late, the nights he said he was at work, the nights I stayed up waiting, worrying, believing him. My hands curled slowly on the table, not shaking, not breaking, just steady. The kind of steady that comes when pain becomes clarity. I closed the bank statements and leaned back in my chair. The kitchen was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. The world outside continued normally, cars passing, birds chirping, while mine slowly shattered into pieces I never expected to see. And then, in that silent kitchen, something inside me changed again. The shift I felt last night began to crystallize into something sharper. I wasn't just uncovering the truth anymore. I was building something, preparing something, a plan that would require patience, precision, and strength I didn't know I had until now. Because once you learn the person you loved built a life behind your back, your heart doesn't break. It hardens. It reshapes itself. It awakens. I stood up, walked to the living room, and grabbed my purse. I needed to see something with my own eyes. Something that screenshots and bank statements couldn't show me. I drove to the cafe where Sienna worked. The place was small, warm, cozy, the kind of shop where sunlight touched every wooden table and soft music played from hidden speakers. I ordered a drink and sat by the window, pretending to read a book while watching the counter. And then I saw her. She walked out of the back room carrying a tray of pastries. She was younger, mid-30s maybe, with calm eyes and a gentle presence. Not glamorous, not intimidating, just simple, soft. Someone who didn't look like she'd hurt anyone. Someone who didn't look like the kind of woman who would help destroy a marriage. But then again, neither did he. She smiled at customers. She laughed with coworkers. She wiped tables with a kind of grace that came from a peaceful mind. And it struck me, she didn't look like someone who carried guilt. She looked like someone who believed she had earned something beautiful, someone who believed promises that didn't belong to her. I watched her for nearly an hour, studying her gestures, her expressions, the innocence on her face that felt almost painful to look at. I wondered if she knew I existed as more than a name, if he had painted me as a villain, if he had made himself the hero of a story he never let me read. I left the cafe quietly, unnoticed. I drove back home with my mind filled with questions I wasn't ready to answer. When I reached home, I sat in my car again, staring at the house the same way I had the night before. Except this time, the weight wasn't confusion, it was certainty. A certainty that something inside me had truly snapped into place. When I stepped inside, I didn't feel like the woman who lived here yesterday. I felt different, stronger, sharper. Like the version of me he never expected to meet. I walked to the bedroom, opened the drawer where I kept old journals, and pulled out a new one. I sat at the edge of the bed and began writing. Not my emotions, not my pain, not my confusion. I wrote facts, dates, times, patterns, names, screenshots taped neatly onto pages, receipts printed and attached, emails summarized, notes written clearly. It wasn't a diary. It was evidence, a record, a blueprint. Because this wasn't going to be a confrontation. This wasn't going to be a conversation. This wasn't going to be me begging for the truth he never planned to give. This was the beginning of something else. Something he would never forget. Something he would never see coming. Something that would change the rest of his life. And as I wrote, a calm settled over me. A calm so deep that it almost scared me. Because when a woman stops trying to save her marriage, she starts preparing to save herself. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt powerful. The next few days passed in a blur of quiet observation and careful planning. Daniel had no idea I knew. He went about his routines, humming softly, leaving early, coming back late. Every gesture, every word, every smile was carefully cataloged in my mind. I paid attention to everything. The way his eyes lingered on his phone when he thought no one was watching, the way he avoided certain topics, the way he seemed almost too perfect, almost too calm. He believed I was asleep, distracted, maybe even oblivious. And he couldn't have been more wrong. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Not directly. I wanted more. I wanted the full picture before I made any move. Every day, I went through his emails, his messages, his schedules. I pieced together the nights he had gone to the boutique hotel. I tracked his calls, his patterns. Every lie became a puzzle piece that revealed the depth of his deception. And with every piece, the anger in me didn't flare like a wildfire. It settled like ice, cold, precise, and sharp. One evening, while he was at work, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, the stack of printed messages in front of me, my journal open, and my laptop beside it. I mapped out everything. I made lists, his lies, her messages, the dates, the locations. I highlighted patterns, cross-referenced stories, and even noted down subtle inconsistencies in his alibis. I was meticulous. Every detail mattered, because I knew one wrong move could ruin everything, not just for him, but for the plan I was beginning to form. And then came the night that changed everything. I was checking his emails again, when I noticed a strange attachment in one of the recent messages from Sienna, a photo, time-stamped just hours ago. A selfie of the two of them at the boutique hotel, smiling. That smile, the one I had imagined in my worst nightmares, was real. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and let the weight of it hit me. The betrayal wasn't just in the past, it was happening now. While I sat here in our house, he was living a life with her, sharing secrets and making memories. Something in me snapped, not the kind of snapping that causes screaming or chaos. It was quiet, calm, but devastating in its own way. I realized that I couldn't just watch anymore. I needed to take action. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but decisively. Every day, every detail I had gathered, every message I had read, every pattern I had documented, all of it was preparation. Preparation for the moment when I would confront him, but on my terms, not his. The following week, I began to put the pieces into motion. I created a separate email account, one that wasn't linked to mine or his. I started using it to send subtle queries, pretending to be a potential client for the boutique hotel and other places he and Sienna frequented. I watched their reactions, the subtle hints of panic or excitement in his responses, how carefully he tried to manage the lie. Every detail I observed added fuel to the plan forming in my mind. It wasn't just about exposing him anymore. That would be too simple, too obvious. I wanted him to feel the impact of his actions, to realize in a way he couldn't ignore or manipulate. The anger inside me was tempered by strategy. Every move I made, every email I sent, every subtle check I performed, it all served one purpose: to dismantle the world he had built behind my back, quietly, efficiently, and completely. And then one afternoon, an opportunity presented itself. Daniel had forgotten to clear his calendar properly, and I noticed a scheduled meeting at the boutique hotel, the same place where he had met with Sienna, constantly. The timing was perfect. He would be there alone, expecting nothing. And I realized that if I wanted to finally confront the truth, I had to see it with my own eyes, not just through messages or photos, but in reality. I planned it meticulously. I dressed casually, blending in with the surroundings, took notes on what I would say, how I would react, how I would remain in control. I wasn't planning to yell, to cry, or to lose myself. I was planning to observe, to understand, to confirm everything I had suspected, and most importantly, to begin the next phase of my plan, the part where he realized that the calm, patient woman he thought he had fooled was now fully awake, fully aware, and fully prepared. When I arrived at the boutique hotel, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. I parked a few blocks away, careful not to be noticed. I could see him through the large glass windows talking to her. The casual gestures, the familiar touches, the quiet laughter, all of it real, all of it undeniable. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to remain calm. I took out my phone, documented discreetly, and recorded the moment. Evidence, confirmation, proof. Watching them together was surreal. Part of me wanted to storm in, scream, demand answers, but another part, the part that had grown strong over weeks of observation, reminded me of why I had waited. This wasn't just about rage. This was about control. This was about timing. I would act when it mattered, not when my emotions demanded it. After an hour of observation, I left, quietly, calmly. Every step I took, I felt the power of knowing. I had discovered not just the betrayal, but the mechanics of it. The way he lied, the way he manipulated, the way he had thought he could live a double life without consequence. And I realized that with this knowledge, I held the upper hand. Back at home, I spread out everything I had collected over the past weeks. Messages, emails, bank statements, observations, recordings. The table looked like a war room, and in a way it was. My heart no longer pounded with fear or sorrow. It beat with anticipation, with focus, with strategy. Every lie he had told, every secret he had kept, every betrayal he had orchestrated, all of it was now mapped, analyzed, and ready. I began planning the next phase. I would not humiliate him in public. I would not yell. I would not beg. I would dismantle the illusion he had carefully built, piece by piece, ensuring that each revelation hit him precisely as it should, quietly, efficiently, and completely. And in the quiet moments before sleep, when I lay in bed with him, I felt a strange thrill. He didn't know, not yet. And every breath he took, every casual word, every smile, was a thread in the web I was weaving. By the time I closed my eyes that night, I was no longer the same woman who had discovered the hidden messages weeks ago. I had transformed. The fear and pain had been replaced with purpose and resolve. I knew what I wanted, and more importantly, I knew how to get it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. For the first time in years, I felt unstoppable.
The morning was quieter than usual. The house felt heavier, charged with anticipation, though Daniel had no idea. He moved around as if nothing had changed, humming softly, brushing past me with the casual familiarity of someone who believed he was untouchable. And perhaps he thought I was still the same woman he had deceived, confused, hurt, unsure. But he had no idea. I had changed. I had planned. I had waited. And now the moment had arrived. For weeks, I had watched, documented, analyzed, and strategized. Every lie, every hidden message, every meeting had been cataloged, cross-referenced, and stored. I had evidence in my hands that could not be denied, ignored, or twisted. But this wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. This was about justice, about making him realize that deceit has consequences, and that the person he thought he could manipulate had grown stronger than he ever imagined. I brewed my coffee and sat at the kitchen table, laying out the evidence like a map of his betrayal. Emails printed, screenshots labeled, bank statements highlighted. Even the recordings from the boutique hotel visits were neatly organized. The level of betrayal he had orchestrated over months was staggering. And yet, as I looked at the neatly aligned papers, I felt calm, not enraged. Anger is fleeting. Planning is permanent. When he walked in, I looked up at him and smiled. A simple, quiet smile. Nothing dramatic, no tears, no shouting, just a smile that held everything he would soon realize he had lost. "Morning," he said, oblivious. "Morning," I replied softly. He sat down, poured himself a cup of coffee, and glanced at me. "You look well. Sleep was good?" "Yes," I said. "Very good." He raised an eyebrow but said nothing more. He didn't know that I was ready, that today would change everything, that today the invisible barrier I had built around myself, composed of months of observation, quiet fury, and careful planning, would finally be crossed. I waited for the perfect moment, not impulsively, but deliberately. And then I spoke. "Daniel, we need to talk." He looked at me, curious, a little nervous, but not enough to suspect the storm that was about to hit him. "Sure. About what?" he asked casually. "About us," I said. He smiled, thinking it was some trivial conversation, a marital grape perhaps. "All right, let's sit." We moved to the living room. I gestured for him to sit, then sat across from him, my hands resting calmly on my lap. I took a slow breath and opened my notebook, not like a diary, like evidence, like the organized record of every lie, every betrayal, every secret he had tried to hide. "This," I said softly, pointing to the pile of papers, "is everything I found." His smile faltered slightly. "Found what?" I leaned forward, meeting his eyes with a calm intensity that made him uncomfortable. "The messages, the emails, the bank statements, the dates, the lies, everything, Daniel." For a moment he froze. I could see the first flicker of panic cross his face, but he tried to mask it. He leaned back, adjusting his time. I don't know what you mean," he said, a little too quickly. I picked up the printed screenshots of Sienna's emails and laid them in front of him. "Do you really expect me to believe you were working late all those nights? Or that you had a second life while I trusted you completely?" His face went pale. His hands fidgeted. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I let him struggle. I let the silence hang. Every second of it was a reminder of the control he had lost. Then I reached for the bank statements. "And what about these? Boutique hotels. 7 times in 5 months. Do you want to explain that? He swallowed hard. His usual confidence, the casual ease he relied on for years, was gone. He realized finally that the careful facade he had built was crumbling, and the woman sitting calmly across from him was not the same person he had deceived. I can explain, he started, but I interrupted. No, Daniel, this isn't about your explanations. This is about reality. This is about the truth you thought you could hide, the truth you thought I wouldn't see, the truth you thought didn't matter. He stared at me, fear and confusion battling in his eyes. What are you planning to do? I smiled softly. I'm not planning to do anything impulsively. I've been planning for weeks. Every move you made, every lie you told, I have documented. I have proof. And I've made sure that the people who matter know too. Not publicly, not yet, but if necessary, I let the words hang, heavy in the room. He looked down, defeated. Sienna, I didn't mean... Don't speak her name in front of me, I said firmly. She is not the problem here. You are. You made choices. You betrayed the trust of the woman who stood by you for 20 years. And now you will face the consequences of those choices. The weight of silence returned. Daniel had no words. He realized that the life he had built behind my back, the lies he had thought so clever, had been dismantled, silently, patiently, meticulously, by the person he had underestimated the most, me. I want you to understand that this isn't about revenge in the way you might imagine. It's about clarity. It's about making you see the truth. And if you ever try to lie again, manipulate again, or take someone's trust for granted, you will not find me weak. You will find me unstoppable. He nodded finally. No protest, no denial. Just the quiet acknowledgement of his mistakes. For the first time in years, he saw the woman he had deceived fully awake, fully aware, and fully in control. After that day, life didn't go back to what it was. There were hard conversations, uncomfortable adjustments, and quiet distance. But there was clarity. There was strength. I had reclaimed my sense of self. I had reclaimed my power. And while the betrayal would always leave a scar, it no longer defined me. I continued my life, focusing on myself, my work, my passions. I built a world where trust and honesty mattered, where manipulation and deceit had no place. And while Daniel and Sienna faded from my life, their shadows no longer haunted me. The moral of my story, the lesson I learned, was simple but profound. Trust is sacred, and when it is broken, strength becomes the only path forward. Betrayal can crush you if you let it, but it can also awaken a force within you you never knew existed. The true power lies not in revenge, but in reclaiming your life, your peace, and your dignity. By the time I reached 60, I was no longer the woman who had discovered hidden messages. I was the woman who had taken control, who had refused to be a victim, and who had found freedom in the aftermath of betrayal. And every day, I reminded myself quietly, the one who survives betrayal with strength becomes unstoppable. And as I sit here now, looking back at the life I have rebuilt, I know this. The pain he caused me didn't destroy me. It shaped me. It sharpened me. It made me the woman I am today, resilient, empowered, and unbreakable.